Hey, Dave Melenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. This week, we're heading to Hotlanta. We are going to have some fun with David Taylor-Klaus. How are you, sir?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
Good, founder of DTK Coaching. So I want to ask the audience a couple questions before we jump in today to kind of prep it. So the question is, have you ever said this or have you ever thought this? So if you're listening and you might find yourself in one of these buckets, let's see. So the first question is, my spouse hates my company. Okay, maybe you've said that, maybe you've thought that, maybe someone said that to you. The second thing is maybe this has happened to you. I love my company, but I hate what it's doing to me. So that's like, ouch, that one hurt a little bit for me. The third one was, how much longer can I take this? So that is a question that is potentially asked. And the last one is a kind of a unique one that's going to require a little bit of contemplation for you. But it says, why am I not farther along than this? So these are some of the things that we're going to unpack today. So thanks so much for hanging out with us, David, fellow author. And again, I found those pieces on your website, and it really started to create some energy of thought in me. So how did you find those questions? Is that something that you're dealing with on a consistent basis, or how did those arise in you?
Because I was that guy.
Oh, okay.
Those were all true for me. And they were true for a number of the other entrepreneurs I knew around me at the same time. And none of us were talking about it.
Okay.
Until things really spiraled. Usually people don't talk about it until they hit bottom.
Sure.
Or if they're lucky, like I was, they figure it out. And I got to a point where it was, if I don't change anything, it's just going to get worse.
Okay.
So I can wait till I hit rock bottom, or I can use something I learned from the 12-step world through some friends of mine. It's called raising the bottom. I can choose to say, this is the bottom, and I'm going to turn things around from here. And that's what I did.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a great way to think of it. Why though, David, do people tend to wait until they're in that spiral or until they've hit rock bottom? I mean, is it a blind spot that people have? Is it the denial of reality? What have you found?
Yes, it's the denial of reality. And
okay.
and it's what so many of us are taught, sometimes overtly, sometimes totally unconsciously. We end up with these unwritten rules that asking for help is a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's quite the opposite. But we're taught, oh, I got this. I can figure it out.
Sure.
And listen, we believe that our spouses don't want to hear about our business and what's freaking us out. We believe that our business partners don't want to hear it. We know our employees don't want to hear it. And very few of us are in the kind of peer groups where we can have those open, deep conversations about, here's what's freaking me out. Here's what's terrifying me. I don't know what I'm doing. And so we hide it and we pretend. And life looks fabulous on Facebook. It looks like we're living the good life, but we're really living the should life, and we're freaked out on the inside.
Sure.
And that's so much of that happens all the time. Entrepreneurs are famous for it.
Well, and I think what's interesting is you have coaching in the company name, so we'll dive into some of that. But people, I would never consider Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods as weak. And when you talk about weakness, people don't want to share their whatever their inability to do something. They don't want to share that with people. And I think it's unique in that somebody like Tiger Woods had so many coaches around him.
Oh, yeah.
A strength coach, a mind coach, a swing coach, all these people. And, and he wasn't, in my mind, weak. He was the farthest from it. So I'm curious if how or where that comes from in people, entrepreneurs that think that, asking for help is weakness. Do you have any clue where that came from?
Really shitty parenting?
Blame it on our parents. Good man.
Yeah. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? No.
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
But you brought up Tiger Woods, which is a great example, because in athletics, we know that a coach is essential, and there's not a professional athlete out there that doesn't have one or multiple coaches. But you also said something about Tiger, that he also had a mindset coach.
Yeah.
And that's the important distinction, that many athletes have a variety of coaches on their bench, but they're all working on the doing aspect of who they are. But very few have coaches that are there to work with them on the being aspect. Tom Glavine, one of the pitchers for the Atlanta Braves back in the, I don't even remember what decade, when he had a sports psychologist that traveled with him at one point because he was having so many panic attacks.
Wow.
And he got so much flack for that. The guy was there doing a ton of work with him on mindset, bringing a lot of coaching to it. And people didn't understand why somebody getting paid that much money at the top of their game needed somebody to help them with their mindset, because if they're making that much money, they should be fine.
Exactly.
That's crap. Doesn't matter what level people are playing at financially, they have the same human foibles as everybody else.
Right.
The imposter syndrome doesn't change when you're making more money. Being successful for most people means that you're making more money. But success without fulfillment is failure. It's a Tony Robbins quote. But when you're not feeling successful internally, when you're not mentally, spiritually, emotionally feeling fulfilled, it doesn't matter how much money you're making.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and there's that F word that we don't like, feeling. Entrepreneurs, we don't have time to feel. I don't have time, David, to slow down, and take inventory and, get a grip on my life and do some EQ work. I don't have time for that. We talk about that, right? Say that again. Until what?
Until you do.
Exactly. Right.
People don't have time for it. And then, so all these people that say, I don't have time, when they have a spouse or a child or a parent that all of a sudden has a health crisis, somehow they manage to take care of them and still get all the work done that they didn't have time to finish before. So when there's a critical point, an inflection point, and somebody says, oh my God, I have to slow down and do the work for me, and do that EQ work, look at the foundation, look at the fundamentals, and figure out who it is that I want to be and why it feels like crap right now. When there's an inflection point, all of a sudden they have time for it. But it's also more difficult, more desperate at that point. Well, what if we did that work all along the way?
Right.
Instead of waiting till the crisis point.
Yeah, wouldn't that? Yeah, easy to say. So I'm listening just along with the rest of the audience and thinking to myself, yeah, you know what? Sounds really good. When I'm done with this podcast, I'm going to go right back to what I was doing. So I mean, I'm just being real, but and so we try each week to just move the needle just a little bit, because massive course correction probably is not in most people's week. So we try little course corrections here or there, and this is obviously one where there were 3 pieces that I found that were really cool. You talked about grow the person, grow the company, and then grow the performance. So I really liked how that was almost like a full, view. It was a 360 to me, with the person and the company, and then your performance. So is that part of your coaching plan, is to look at the person and then the company and then the performance?
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting. People come in, want to hire a coach to come in and help elevate performance. Well, if you want to grow the company, if you want to elevate performance, you start by growing your people. But then you get coaches, the companies that are hiring coaches to, go coach my team, fix my team. And if you want to grow your people, you have to grow yourself, because the saying's harsh, but the fish rots from the head down. So whatever the cultural cascade is, it starts with the person at the top, whether it's the top of the company or the top of that team. So if you're trying to grow your people, you start by growing yourself. So I do a lot of work with the leader, looking at what are the internal changes we're working on with you, and then looking at the culture of the team and what is it that serves the team. And that's how we get access to changing the performance. The challenge is, so often leaders just want to help their players change their behaviors so they get different results. That's short-lived at best. Because it's not going deep enough. Because if you don't change the feelings underlying those behaviors, or the thoughts underlying those feelings, or the beliefs underlying those thoughts, or the identity that's coming behind those beliefs, you're not going to change the results with any meaningful long-term basis. And we tend to go shallow.
Sure.
So part of what's important about coaching is we start doing the deeper work so that we can change, we can get meaningful, lasting change out of the exercise. Otherwise, you just keep doing little bits to get short-term gains and it doesn't stick.
So I could envision an entrepreneur / business owner coming to you and saying, hey, David, can you improve the performance on the team, bypass me, and start working on them right away because they're the problem, whether it's a blind spot or ego, whatever. Do you see that? Has that happened before to you where they think that it's the team? If I just had a good team, David, I would be great, and it's so funny. I see that. And I was just curious if you see that as well.
Well, so look at it this way. Yes, I see it a lot. And it's a lot like a parent saying to a coach or a therapist, fix my kid.
Yeah.
Well, the number one treatment, the treatment of recommendation from the American Psychological Association for complex kids, like kids with ADD and anxiety and stuff like that, is behavior modification, but not for the kid, for the parent.
Sure.
Right? Helping the parent help the kids. Well, when a leader comes to me and says, here, fix my team, my first response is, dude, you're on the team. So if I'm going to come in and do team coaching, your butt's in a chair in the circle. It's team coaching. You're part of the team. If
here's the
says,
keys.
No.
Here's the keys, David.
Exactly. And
Tell
I'm
me
like,
when this thing's fixed.
My
Okay,
answer
I'm going to drop it off like a car at the auto mechanic.
Right. Yeah, this team is pinging when I rev. No,
exactly.
I tell them no.
Wow.
And I tell them there are other coaches that'll do that.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, thanks for sharing that, because I think that that's such a, I don't know, again, I call it blind spot. It's something that so many people struggle with. They own a business, so they think it's impossible to admit failure, admit weakness. I'm not part of the problem. I'm the solution. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It just sure makes team change so much harder when you're trying to modify a behavior and you refuse to look at yourself inwardly. So,
I had a company I worked with, and one of the things the team in total was talking about was triangulation. Was a problem where, one employee was talking to another one about a third one.
Yep.
Right. And that's super toxic, because when, Bob is talking to Sam about John, as soon as Bob and Sam start talking, Sam's first thought is, holy crap, what's Bob saying about me when I'm not there?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's super toxic for culture.
Yeah.
But they were complaining because there was a lot of triangulation on the team. And what surfaced during the team coaching was the owners of the company were doing the same damn thing.
Yep.
And they're saying, I want my team to stop triangulating like that, when they were doing the exact same thing. They were talking to other employees about other employees.
Sure.
And doing it out loud. And so what we see is when it's like, you are part of the problem, you're always part of the problem, because whatever the culture of your team is comes from you.
Yeah.
And so addressing it with you first is how you address it with the team. And that's something that, as you're growing as a leader, even if you're just leading a small team, first time in leadership, first time in management, wow, your leadership wake is the first thing to look at. What's the impact of my leadership? Is it what I want it to be? Or am I having an unintended impact that's crappy?
Yeah. Well, and that makes, then you have to look back. If you're looking at a wake, you have to turn around and look back. And we're taught, always move forward, always look forward. Don't worry about what goes on behind you, and unfortunately there's a mess back there. That's why we have rear view mirrors. So don't turn around, but at least use a mirror, use a coach that can help you with that. And that's what I think is so cool. I mean, I think about triangulation, and I never thought of it, that word, in that context until you brought that up. So, I mean, that's got to be so prevalent in, businesses around the world sitting right now. Somebody's talking to somebody about somebody else. And I think the danger, David, is justifying in their mind that this is leadership, this is healthy, this is going to fix the problem. And so Do you get involved with much of that stuff?
Yeah. One of the things that we teach in a peer group to do is,
Okay.
all right, so Bob's talking to Sam about John. Sam starts hearing it and says, have you talked to John yet? No, let's go.
Yeah.
And walk them over to have that conversation. It's amazing how fast triangulation stops. It's fascinating. And it's not always that they think it's leadership. A lot of what happens is people talk about other people as an easy, low-hanging fruit, an easy topic to
Yeah.
build connection.
Sure.
So Bob and Sam may think that they're building connection.
Yeah.
They're doing it at the expense of trust, connection, and basically it impacts decision-making at the immediate
Sure.
core. So they're not doing it to be jerks. It's the unintended impact of trying to build connection.
Wow.
I mean, sometimes some people are trying to be jerks. It's
Sure.
like
Sure.
they get juice from degrading other people so they feel better. Okay, they're toxic employees,
Yeah.
and that's got to go. But the innocent triangulation is just as toxic. The trick is stop stuff that doesn't serve, replace it with stuff that does.
Wow. Well, and that would require us to slow ourselves down, to think before we speak. I mean, now you start, all of a sudden you're back to this, and I hear brakes going right now. I hear them screeching because they're like, I don't have time to slow down. I'm trying to get more out of my team, David. I'm not trying to get less. So why would I want to stop them to this, to that, to the other thing? So this is a hard kind of vision to cast for people. So
it's counterintuitive, Dave. It is, because the truth is you slow down to speed up, right? And you take a high performance vehicle out onto the track, right? And first tendency is to gun it.
Yep.
Most of those cars, if you gun it like that, they're going to rattle.
Yep.
And your max speed becomes much lower because you're going to start feeling the car shimmy and you're going to slow down. The difference is if you go slow to go smooth and then go smooth to go fast, top speed is higher. And the problem is companies that are trying to bludgeon through and power through and got to go faster, got to get more, they're missing the key elements and they're creating that instability on the team. Slowing down, bring in intention, bring in response instead of reaction, right? You know, the reaction is that animalistic instinct response. You're not responsible for your first thought, but you are responsible for your second. And that's the difference between a reaction and a response. And the response will move you forward. So pausing to breathe before you talk, freaking brilliant technique. It's just that simple, Dave. Add oxygen. Take a breath before you speak. And the chance of responding instead of reacting, that is the easiest thing for people to do.
Sure.
Easy. We breathe all the time.
Yep.
It's not a new skill. It's just new timing.
Yeah, I mean, in the sales world, when somebody brings up a topic that I'm not really familiar with, or I wasn't prepared to go there, rather than, you know, because I don't know why in the sales world we think silence is like so deadly. But I'm always telling people, you know, that's a great point. I never thought of that. Tell me more. You know, my favorite 3 words are tell me more, so that you can get that person back into the communication. So now I can start to at least calm myself down, breathe, whatever I need to do, you know, in that situation. But it's so like, it's like so reactionary every day, and I get it. And so we try and, you know, every week just try and give these little tips, you know, to help people. So, you know, from your book, what's one thing that people could take away from that? First of all, it's called Mindset Mondays, right?
Mindset Mondays with DTK.
Awesome. And on that, you know, what's something that somebody listening that's resonating right now with what we're talking about? What's one thing in there that would be a good takeaway for them?
So one of the things that comes up a lot is the concept of words create worlds. So look, the reason I wrote this book in the first place is it's the book, my coach challenged me to write the book I needed to read. And this is the book I needed to read when I started my entrepreneurial journey 30 years ago.
Gotcha.
Right? I earned this gray hair, right?
Cool.
And this book would have made a huge difference for me because there's a concept I talk about at the beginning that we do not see the world as it is. We see the world as we are.
Okay.
And that's not to say we're stuck. It's quite the opposite. It's to say we're in complete control of our mindset, the lens through which we see the world. And the lens we choose colors the evidence we collect. It changes how we experience the world. So when we change our lens, we change our life. And this is the one thing I hammer throughout the book, sometimes very directly, sometimes very subtly.
Sure.
But there's a concept in there called words create worlds. And the words we use change how we experience the world and tell us how we're experiencing it. And one of the things that I play with in the chapter about that is the idea of playing with the language you use when you're talking about stuff that you want to get, that is on your to-do list, for example. Almost all your listeners have a to-do list, whether it's in their head or on paper or in
Sure. Yep.
Google tasks. It doesn't matter. It's out there. But the point is, the reason most of us aren't getting them done is we're not attaching motivation to it. And we're not attaching a motivation that we give a crap about. And so one of the things is when you start looking at stuff on your list and you're using language like I ought to, I should, I must, I have to, I need to, those are all external motivations. And the likelihood of you're getting it done without attaching an internal motivation to it is extremely low.
Right.
When you can find, the I want to or I get to attached to it, it makes a massive difference. And let's take this to their personal life as well. Let's give an inane example. Okay. I hate taking out the trash. I don't like taking the bags out. I don't like taking it down the stairs, get into the gate and doing the trash can. I don't like dragging them up the street. I hate it. There's nothing sexy about it. I have zero motivation to do it. And now that the kids aren't in the house, guess who's left doing it, right? Not high on my list.
Sure.
But again, something even as inane as that, I know what I do like. I love the way the kitchen smells when I'm cooking, right? But if the trash is in there and it smells like crap, it means that I'm not getting what I want, which is when I'm cooking in there and drinking a glass of wine, I want it to smell good. So I have a motivation that I can attach to doing an inane task that I literally hate.
Gotcha.
It'll give me motivation to get it done. And when we can have those internal conversations and choose motivations to get things done, it makes a massive difference. And something that simple as playing with our language has made a massive difference for everybody I've worked with. And I'll give you one more. Dave, what's something that you don't feel like you're very good at?
Accounting.
How about something you suck at? Oh, accounting. Oh, that's great.
Super easy one. There's a layup for you.
There's a layup because it's easy to say I suck at accounting.
Yep.
But here's the thing.
I've said that. I think I've said that on this show.
Oh, I may have said that this week in my life. And
Good man.
It came out a lot angrier than we just said it.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the thing. When I say I suck at it, that makes it true. Right? This is how simple your primitive brain responds to this.
Okay.
It means that everything that's happened up until now will dictate how it's going to be from now on. I suck at accounting makes it true. It has been like that. It is like that. It will be.
Sure.
Here's the difference. Up until now, really sucked at accounting. That up until now makes a massive difference for the way our brains process information. It leaves an opening for change.
Wow. Okay.
Right? And simply adding words like up until now to it, up until now, I really sucked at accounting. That gives you the possibility of changing it. Right? Up until now, I've had a really hard time talking to difficult employees.
Sure. Yeah.
Or handling sales objections. If you say I suck at sales objections, you always will.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you say up until now, I've had a real issue with it, that gives your brain an opening for change. So words do create worlds. It's super important that we pay attention to how we're thinking about and talking about these things.
Sure. I remember years ago when I owned another company and we went to trade shows and I was driving on a beautiful Sunday morning down to a trade show talking myself into it, right? I have to go to this show. I have to go to this show. And something kind of clicked in my mind and it was like, why don't you change have to get to? And for whatever reason, it took it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I couldn't wait to get there. And my whole life changed. It did have a positive, influence on that. So I can totally appreciate those mindset shifts that you're talking about. And I think that to your other point about the garbage, I think that's really cool because I know plenty of people in the sales world that say I hate cold calls. And I'm not here to say, oh gosh, you should love them. You should do them on Saturdays and Sundays just for practice, you know. But I think if you hate cold calls, but you love the speedboat or you love whatever that is going to get you, is that what you're kind of talking about? Where you
Absolutely.
focus
Yeah,
off of the one and onto the other?
that's the next level, because you start looking at what you want, what you get as a result of. And for folks that are starting to play with the idea of motivation and pairing motivation, that's the second step.
Okay.
Right? That's the more advanced, because it's not immediate.
Sure.
But you're speaking to exactly what's important, because here are the underpinnings, let's say the science of it, right?
Sure.
We have no intrinsic attachment to money, right? Money is an agreed upon fiction. We have these little pieces of paper that all look alike. They're all the same size. They're really kind of ugly. And we say that's worth money. That's worth value, and enough that some people kill for it, right?
Sure.
But it's just an agreed upon fiction. We could say tomorrow they're worthless. But here's what we do have an emotional attachment to: what we get as a result of having the money. We're not attached to money. We're attached to what we get because of it, right? As a result of it. So yes, nothing sexy about cold calls for some people. Some people love them.
Yep, exactly.
For most people, nothing sexy about cold calls.
Yep.
Yet, what does it lead to? More opportunities to do what you love to do with the money you get from closing more deals.
Right.
Period.
Yep.
So when you can make that connection, you stop bitching about it. You can
Sure.
actually attach motivation to it, and
Gotcha.
it's done.
So is that why people put like a picture of the beach or a picture of a boat or a sports car, whatever, in around their desk to be able to kind of keep them, if that's what motivates you? Is that what people tend to do to kind of get their mindset off of the actual activity that they don't enjoy and move it into something that makes it more palatable?
Absolutely. It's, here's why I'm doing this. And whether it is a picture of your family at Disney, I had a podcast host who was saying, my organizing principle is I want to take my family to Disney for 2 weeks every year.
Sure.
Wow. Disney, 2 weeks? That's enough.
Oof.
Every year? Whoa. Clearly, he has much more energy than any of the
I'll
rest
meet
of
you.
us. But,
Hey, family, I'll meet you down there. Okay.
God, but that's how he makes decisions.
Sure.
What's going to get me the money I need to do that? What's going to get me the time off I need to do that? What's going to keep
Yep.
me energetic and fit enough to do that? So it's allowing him to drive his decision making. Whatever it is that's on your desk that helps you remember.
Yep.
People have vision boards as the backdrop of their phone or
Sure.
their computer or on their mirror. It doesn't matter. Find what motivates you and keep it in front of you. Don't just try to keep it in your head.
So what drew you to this to begin with? I mean, I know you said at the onset that you were that person with those thoughts. What drew you to write the book? What drew you to this mindset section of your life?
All right, super blunt. Because I was doing such a shitty job of managing my mindset. I was suicidal in 2005. And
Wow.
what changed for me was by shifting mindset, I started to create something very different in my world.
Gotcha.
And I know how powerful it is. It is, you can wait until it's a life or death matter, or you can play with it now and it's easier.
Yeah. Wow, that's really good. Thank you for being vulnerable. I mean, when people talk about these traumatic events in their life, it's really hard, to, number one, admit it, number two, to experience, share it with somebody, because there's so much potential for criticism that can come back. So,
I'll make it real for you, because you've got listeners who are feeling alone and feeling like they're disconnected. And
Yep.
for me, I'm totally transparent with you. I couldn't find a reason for me to stay that was for me. And that is, we have such an epidemic of suicide in this country, and the suicide rate for entrepreneurs is shockingly high, right? Because we're living in our own world. We're not having the conversations out loud. The isolation is crippling. So here's the thing. I couldn't figure out a reason to stay that was for me, but I had learned that children of a parent who has committed suicide are 50 times more likely
Oh my
to attempt
gosh.
suicide in their lifetime.
Sure.
And I didn't stay for me, I stayed for them.
Yeah.
That's not
Wow.
the legacy I wanted. I got
Yeah.
to a point where I was doing it for me.
Sure.
That's what makes it lasting.
Wow.
But I did the work for them. So it's okay if the motivation has to be through irritation, right? That
Yeah.
this sucks, I don't want it like this.
Sure. Yep.
You can use that to get to where it's inspiration.
Yeah.
So don't
Yeah.
discount that.
I struggle with people that use that almost as a badge, of, like I have to work this many hours and I have to be away from home. I mean, I love that comment in your website that said reintroduce successful business people to their families and the world outside their office. To me, that was why I really wanted you on the show, was to really understand that piece, because it seems like polar opposites. How in the world can I be a successful business person, whether I own it, C-suite, or on the team, whatever? How can I be a successful business person and still have a family and still have something outside of the office? I mean, that's getting harder and harder, and that line is getting blurred, I think, more and more. And so I'm just curious, what have you found that kind of would help somebody listening that might be struggling with that exact thing?
It's honestly, it's starting to reconnect to what's really important. Our problem is that we're told all the way along that to be a good parent or partner, you have to be a good provider.
Yep.
And to be a good provider, you've got James Campbell Quick, this researcher in Texas, did a study several years ago, about 10 years ago now, that the 70-hour work week had become the new norm.
Yeah.
And so we had work was taking up all of our time, and we were jamming life into the cracks around it. But that's why our divorce rate for first marriages is just approaching 60%. And the
Jeez.
divorce rate for second marriages is tipping towards 75%. I will tell you that hiring a coach to help get your mindset twisted back to center is much cheaper than a divorce attorney. And I'm not saying hire me to fix your brain. No. This is whatever you're doing to rewire your thinking.
Yep.
Is critical, and it's a lot less expensive than divorce, and it's a lot less taxing on your system, because we get people that are so overcalibrated towards being a provider, they start to disconnect or damage the people for whom they're trying to provide.
Sure.
That's where it gets twisted.
And when you use the word rewire, that to me means there's a wiring problem to start with. So I think there's this natural, maybe I'm the only one that is in this thought process right now. When you say rewire, you're saying I'm hearing you say the wiring isn't correct. So now I'm thinking, well, who are you to tell me that my wiring isn't correct? You don't even know me, right? So I'm assuming that you get that type of resistance, up front. And I'm just trying to find a way for somebody that's building that wall right now.
Yeah, no. Great.
Hopefully
Great
they're
to bring
still
that
listening.
up.
So hopefully they're still listening. That's
Hopefully
a
they're
lot
still
of them
listening.
are like, screw this, I'm out of here, right?
Well, I'll
But
tell you what, if those people are still
unpack
listening right now, give me about 2 minutes and they'll understand.
Excellent.
Because it's not that your wiring's wrong, it's that you're trying to use a different pathway. You're trying to go from wire A to wire B, right? Our brains are wired in a way that works against us, because our brains are wired for sameness. Our brains want to do the same thing, right? That's helped us over the last several 100,000 years to get where we are, but it's not working for us now. So here's a teeny bit of brain science. All the brain cells, neurons, they're fat end that has little places that things connect to it. And then it has a really long stretch called an axon that has a lot of fat deposits on the outside of it, right? And then at that end, it connects to the other fat parts of the other neurons. But here's the thing, that stretch that has the fatty deposit on it, the more fat that it has on it, the more myelin on the sheath, the better the electricity travels across it. Our brain is nothing more than electrical currents running across wires. The more fat, the more that electricity wants to go along that path, right? So it's more conductive. So here's the problem. Every time we follow the same neural pathway, the same thought process, the same belief, the same behavior, the same action, you get a little more fat on that. So it travels even better. So if I want to change a behavior, I've got to stop using this wire and start using that wire. I got to stop using this neuron, and I got to go onto the a neuron to the left.
Sure.
But here's the thing, the neuron to the left doesn't have as much fat on it. So where does the electric current want to go? The fat one.
Sure.
So the reason it takes you 3 to 4 weeks or more to build a new habit is because you've got to do it enough to get that other neuron fatty, so the electricity goes that way, and the one where it's been going to wither. So you have to do a behavior, and you choose a behavior and repeat it frequently enough every day for a period of time so that you can fatten up that neuron. So our brain wants to do the same thing and go the same way all the time. We have to put time, effort, energy, and attention on choosing a different wire. So anything we can do to rewire, to choose a different wire in the brain, that's how we change behavior. That's how we change thoughts. That's how we change beliefs. It's not a flip switch, one and done.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
There was your brain science for the day.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because and again, I don't even try to have these thoughts. It just happens. And, rewire felt like, I got to rewire the house because the old wire is old and decrepit and doesn't work anymore. And so which you're talking about is more of a directional change. So that I appreciate
switching
that.
Wires.
That's awesome. So as we start to come in for a landing today, and this time flew by, thank you so much for your insight here. I want to ask, what's David Taylor-Klaus's tip of the week for anyone listening?
I want to go back to what we were talking about before with breathing.
Sure.
Honest to God, I will give you, this is one thing that will change your life when you choose to use it. Before you respond to your boss, a peer, your team, your kid, your spouse, take a breath, especially if whatever they say has jacked you up. Not that happens. No. When somebody says something to you that gets you emotionally charged, whether you're pissed, hurt, angry, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Take a breath before you respond. When a prospect says something that you think is indicative of blowing up the deal, breathe before you respond. Shut your mouth, breathe through your nose, and then respond from there. Just one thing. Start practicing it. Even when they're not pissing you off, just take a breath and see how different your response is. And see what that does to your behaviors, to your relationships, to your trust, to your outcomes, to your sales. Just breathe. It's simple.
That's so cool. I use the 4 second box is what I call it, right? Where you breathe in for 4 seconds and then you hold it for 4 seconds.
Exactly. Box breathing.
Breathe out for 4 seconds and then hold, nothing for another 4. I mean, it really, I don't know anything about the science part of it. I just know that, boy, it really takes you down a few notches of, whatever you're getting, whatever emotion you're at right there, it really just kind of calms it down and takes it down a few notches. So
Dave, that box breathing is a super old technique, like thousands of years old. It works. You don't need to know the science. It doesn't matter. Stuff works. Try it.
In my mind, I created it. So quit telling people it's.
You know what? It's all yours.
Dang it. I was all excited that nobody had ever saw that before. So, but yeah, I mean, the first time I read about it and tried it, I was like, wow, this, it's like, come on, this is crazy. And I use it when I'm speaking in front of a group. And, you obviously, even if you spoke hundreds of times, you still have that little bit of anxiety. At least I do. And so I'm like, okay, breathe, I do that breathing, and boy, it just really, again, thanks for bringing that up for the group. So last question before I let you go, David, is what's one thing that most people don't know about you that you feel comfortable sharing on the air in front of the masses?
Well, I've already shared the suicide piece.
Yeah, right. Yeah. What's left?
No, I think one thing that most people don't know about me is I got a new appreciation for life at age 17 when we were rafting down the river in Atlanta, and I noticed this guy off to the right of the raft, who was swimming, all of a sudden I saw his head go down and bubbles come up.
Mm.
And after about 15 seconds, I realized he wasn't coming up again.
Wow.
And I dove in, swam to the bottom of the river, pulled him up to the surface. By the time I came up, somebody was screaming and
Sure.
people were running into the water to get him. All I had to do was
Yeah.
get him up.
Yeah.
But it was, I learned to pay attention to what my gut was telling me and
Sure,
notice
sure.
what wanted to be noticed and to take action and not wait.
Wow.
That was at 17.
Holy cow. So do you still stay in contact with that person to this day?
Never saw him again. I saw them pick him up, take him to the shore, give him CPR, and he started breathing again. Never saw him again. Never connected.
Wow. Well, if you're listening and that was you, reach out to David and say thanks. Okay. Oh my
That
gosh.
was 40 years ago. I haven't thought about
Yeah.
that in a long while.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thanks again for sharing that, making yourself vulnerable there. So, again, for somebody listening today, I'm hoping, and David's hoping, that there's something that kind of is gnawing at you right now. There's something that's just like, man, this is a little bit deeper than I'm used to listening, whether I listen to a sports podcast or I listen to whatever type of podcast, whether you're a weekly listener or you just stumbled on this for the first time. We have these guests like David because there's so much here that we can improve upon for ourselves. And the interesting thing is, whether it's breathing or words or, some of the other tips that were shared today, they don't cost anything. That's kind of the weird thing about it. It's not like we're saying, hey, buy this $79 set and you'll never have a problem again. I mean, there's some things here that hopefully you're able to, put into practice right away. But if that's not enough and you want to reach out to, to David, please make sure and do that. And, he'll be happy to talk with you. And what's the best way, David, for people to get in contact with you if they want to learn more?
Look, it's the easiest way. You go to mindsetmondayswithdtk.com. Yes, you get information about the book, but you can also get in touch with me. You can message me from the site if you've got more questions about what we talked about. Either way, all the information's in one place. It's mindsetmondayswithdtk.com.
Awesome. Perfect. Mindset Mondays with DTK.com. What a great place to go. And again, it doesn't cost you anything to go there. And I think, again, it'll give you some interesting opportunities to see if you want to take him up on any of the offers that he has. I know I looked in that, and he'll help you for free to a certain extent, obviously have an initial call with you. So, it doesn't even cost anything to at least check in with the guy. So I just want to say thank you so much, David, for this. I took a bunch of notes like I do all the time. And boy, now I have to put some of these into practice. So that's always the hard part. It's easy to learn. It's hard in my world, at least for me. Up until now,
it's been hard.
Up until now,
Good catch.
I almost slipped. Man. Oh,
Great
Katie,
catch.
we almost had to just like turn it off right at that spot. But, no, but seriously, up until now, I have struggled with that. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to allow my brain to have that, at least that opportunity to continue to improve these things. So again, thank you so much for investing time with me and with the audience. And again, thank you for your vulnerability. And if I get down to Atlanta, I don't be surprised if I'm on your front door, because I'd love to hang out.
Bring it.
Learn. So
yeah, well, there might have to be a bottle of wine involved. So if that works for you,
well, I'm not a wine drinker, but if there's a dark beer, oh my gosh, that would be totally. Or I'll bring my own if it's a BYO party. That's fine.
Now I'll make sure there's some here for you.
Excellent. Thank you again so much. And again, for anybody listening, this is the great time to stop the podcast and literally jump on his website and just do something, because this itch that you can't scratch, this pain that's in your brain right now, I don't think it's going to last very long, because you'll go on to something else. So I just encourage you to do something with what you were given today, and pass it along to somebody else, share it with your team. challenge us if that's what you think you are onto. That's fine. Totally fine with that. Just do something with it rather than just jump on to the next. So again, thanks, David, and look forward again talking to you soon.
Awesome. My pleasure, man. Be well.
Take care.